One of the steps in the scanning methodology is to build network topology diagrams to make sure we know where stuff is. Now, instead of doing that manually, we have some automated tools that we can use as well. And in this nugget, I'd like to show you an example of one of those. It's from SolarWinds. It's called the Network Topology Mapper. And it is available from SolarWinds. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit and grab this link right here. Network Topology Mapper from SolarWinds. And then we can download a free trial. So we'll click on download free trial. We'll put our information in and we will download it. Now, I've already done this to save us a few minutes of time. And once it was downloaded, I simply installed the network mapping tool. And with it installed, we can go ahead and simply launch it. So I'm going to click on the Windows icon in the bottom left-hand corner and type in network. And that brings up Network Topology Mapper, which is installed. I'll click on it. And it's asking me, hey, your evaluation ends in 14 days. Do you want to keep evaluating? I'm going to say, yes, I do. So to start off, we're going to click on New Scan, and it wants the SNMP credentials. So in an environment, if you manage that environment, or if you've compromised a system and you know the SNMP credentials, we can put it in here. And that way this mapping tool can query those devices and get information from them via SNMP. If you don't know what the credentials are, we can simply click on Next. Next, it's asking us for WMI credentials. That's Windows Management Instrumentation. Effectively, it's Microsoft's implementation for web-based enterprise management. And if we've compromised the system already and we know what those credentials are, we can add those credentials as part of this mapping tool to make it even that much better. See, this tool is designed for somebody who is managing the network and has that information, but it can also be useful for an attacker, even if we have missing parts. So without the WMI credentials, I'll click on Next. It's asking for VMware credentials. If you have virtualized environments, that way it can log in and do queries against that space. If we're a hacker, we're not likely going to have that information as well. We'll click on Next. And then for network selection, let's add a new subnet, and let's add the 192.168.1.0 network with the 24-bit mask. And that's how we spell 24 bits in dotted decimal. And we'll click on Add. And we'll click on Next. We can name this scan. We'll leave the hops as 0. We're not going to be going outside of our subnet. I'll leave the other defaults there. We'll click on Next, and we'll go ahead and simply run this once. We could also set up to run on a schedule, and that way it could automatically query the devices, query the network, and update the map dynamically if things change. So we'll click on Next. It's going to give us a summary of what it's about to do, and we'll click on Discover. So it's going to take a few minutes as it goes out and queries all the devices and get what information it can. Even though we didn't supply any credentials, it's still going to be able to build a topology of devices and their IP addresses and put it into a graphical format for us. And through the magic of editing, we won't have to wait the several minutes it's going to take. It's going to happen very, very fast. And it is done. I've got a little map navigator here that can show us various parts if we want, or we could go ahead and simply zoom out to go ahead and see it all on one page. Or we could zoom in too. So if we want to take a closer look at this device, we could double click on it, and that happens to be a printer. Looks like a Brother printer at .100. And the great thing about a dynamic network mapping tool like this is that as networks change and devices move, if we run our scans periodically and we have login credentials to those environments, it can dynamically update the mapping and information about those systems. And we can expand these groups by taking a look at the details for all the devices it found. And we also have options when we right-click on a device for additional options, including integration with other tools from SolarWinds. Now, I've got a question for you. Let me zoom out just a little bit further. I have a question for you. Can you name one other tool that we've looked at through our nuggets that also had the ability to scan the network and build a graphical representation of those devices? What was that tool? And if you're saying, Keith, it was Nmap's cousin, ZenMap, you are absolutely correct. So having a tool like this would be a little bit overkill, especially if we didn't have all the credentials and passwords we need to get all the information from those devices. But it is an example of a tool that can be used to dynamically build and update network topologies. In this nugget, we've taken a look at an example of a network mapping tool. In our example, we use the Network Topology Mapper from SolarWinds, which can be handy in building a graphical representation of the networks that we're either supporting or hacking. So thanks for joining me in this nugget. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.